Hello and welcome back to Post It. When we left off last time, I left you on a big cliffhanger. I'm so sorry. Um, Rose kind of saved the boys, Frost and Dee Dee, from what looked to be a humongous bullying incident in the bathroom with Dee Dee's dice in the bathroom stall. And she ended up somehow challenging him to a gauntlet, which, as we know from the past from Eric, who ran it last time, that it's really dangerous. And Rose hasn't even seen it, let alone own a bike. So that's where we left off. That's where we'll continue. The first showdown of the year, Cameron Cole versus Rose Holland. There had been a couple of solo runs, like Evans, but there was no head-to-head racing. Add to that this was the first run between a girl and a guy in the history of the hill, and only the fourth time a girl had ever tried to run the gauntlet. And it became plain as white toast to anyone who could sneak out of the house and make it to here. It became plain as white toast that anybody who should sneak out of the house and make it to Hirohito Hill to watch. Everyone but Wolf. Wolf had been at school, and Rose had asked me not to call him. I already know what he's going to say, and it's probably best that he doesn't know. It wasn't my call. It was my bike, sure, in Dee Dee's honor, but it was Rose's bet and Rose's body, her bruises and potentially broken bones. She didn't want Wolf there for whatever reason, so I didn't call. That didn't mean he wouldn't find out, of course, but maybe he wouldn't find out in enough time to try to stop her. We met outside my house after school, and I brought out Rose's ride, which was a 10-year-old Huffy bike, once painted red, now looking more like rust. My mother had snagged it for $20 at a garage sale. Dee Dee had a can of barbecue Pringles in hand and munched nervously. "Oh, now you bring Pringles," I said. Rose ran her hand along the frame of my bike. "We'll have to raise the handlebar," she said. "I'll need to steer, and we'll need to raise the seat, too." "You won't need to raise the seat," I told her. "You won't even need to pedal. It's got 18 speeds, and you won't need any of them." The gauntlet had 2 speeds, way too fast, and abrupt stop. Steering is all that matters, and balance. I thought about Bench's formula for making it down the gauntlet, and not letting go. "And faith," Dee Dee added. "You need to relax," Rose said, looking at Dee Dee and pointing to the can of chips. "What's the worst that could happen?" I didn't want to say, but as Captain Dramatic handed over the Pringles, he immediately launched into a lecture on the worst of the gauntlet and its storied atrocities. The worst that could happen? Let's see. In '04, Jimmy Breaker Beaker earned his nickname on the hill with a compound fracture and a bone sticking out, but blood, black, gore, and everything. In '08, some kid named Carlos from another school nearly lost an eye to a tree branch. He had to have surgery, and he wore a patch for 3 months. Everybody calls him Captain now. Supposedly 30 years ago, a kid who lived in the neighborhood actually died. Rose stopped with her hand stuck in the chips. "Are you serious?" She looked at me. "Is he being serious?" "He didn't die going down the hill," I corrected. "He had leukemia, and he passed away in a hospital. But kids tell that story to scare other kids away." "I'm telling you what I heard," Dee Dee insisted. I took a moment to appreciate the irony. This is how we got in the mess to begin with, people telling other people what they heard. "First to die while biking down a hill. Not a record I want," Rose said. She straddled my bike. It still looked too small for her. She was kind of a real-life Goldilocks. Nothing quite fit, but she didn't let it deter her. She steered the bike down the driveway, and Dee Dee and I watched her pedal up and down the street a few times, looking not too wobbly. Then she asked us to stand out in the middle of the road and pretend to be trees so she could practice weaving in between us. "No," Dee Dee said, "I don't want to be a tree." "So you'd rather have your head stuck in a toilet?" Rose fired back. The toilets in the boys' bathroom were cleaned once at the end of the day, and by then the smell was atrocious. There was a reason somebody put a sticky note in one of the stalls that said, "Now entering Chernobyl, population 0. It was not the kind of bath you wanted to take. We took our places in the street, and I closed my eyes as Rose whipped past. Her green jacket brushed against me, but that was as close as she got to knocking me over. She maneuvered around us a half a dozen times, only riding over Dee Dee's foot once. He was almost positive she broke it, but I think that was just Dee Dee being Dee Dee. After the 3 of us sat in my garage and finished off chips, I felt a little better. Rose had shown she was capable of consistently maneuvering between two trees, or at least 2 humans posing as trees, on a straight, paved road going 5 miles an hour. Maybe there's a chance she would survive. I sucked the red barbecue powder from my fingertips. "Do you know what this is like?" Dee Dee said, as Rose funneled the crumbs from the can into her mouth. "Game of Thrones. Like when you have a trial by combat and you get to choose your companion? That's exactly what this is." "Your parents let you watch Game of Thrones?" Rose asked. I couldn't tell if she was impressed or appalled. Maybe she was jealous. Oh, no, of course not, Dee Dee said. But I did get the books from a used bookstore, and I read them late at night when my parents were asleep. I smiled. The kind of deviousness surprised me coming from Dee Dee. How is this anything like Game of Thrones? I asked. Well, in the books, if you're accused of something like poisoning a king or stabbing your cousin, you can call for a trial by combat to defend your honor, but you don't have to do it yourself. You can choose the person to fight for you. And you chose me, Rose said, smiling. She reached over to punch Dee Dee playfully. When she leaned over me, I noticed her hair smelled like coconuts. Technically speaking, you volunteered, I corrected Rose. How does it usually turn out, this trial by combat? Rose asked. Dee Dee scratched his head. Honestly, somebody usually gets their head smashed in. We all let that thought sink in. Dee Dee forced a smile. It's pretty good stuff, though. It's pretty bloody. I asked if I could borrow the books when he was done reading them. At 4:35, we started our quiet walk out to the hill. I volunteered to push the bike, saying Rose should save her strength, get focused, or whatever it was that people did before they plummeted to their death on the gauntlet. We passed a gas station, and Dee Dee insisted on stopping and getting milk. Sorry. This will be for when you win, he said, like the Indy 500. Rose said okay, as long as it was chocolate milk, and in the end she ended up drinking it on her way there to wash down the chips. Up ahead, you could see the outline of Hirohito Hill peeking above the houses like green sunrise. A couple of kids from BMS passed us, riding their own bikes. I saw one of them point and say, "There she is, that's Rose Holland." "You're famous," I said. "No, I'm infamous. There's a difference." We cut through the last neighborhood and across the field, past the fence, through the gate that was never locked. You could already see the crowd forming at the top. Half the school, it seemed, an even bigger crowd than Evans Run. Everybody bundled in jackets, everybody huddled in groups. I didn't see Bench, but that didn't mean he wasn't there somewhere. Looking at the tree-studded slope, I felt a heaviness. Part of it was just dread, recognizable from my last day of school at the moment of the bathroom leading up to this, but there was something else, kind of a sense of significance. It felt like the kind of thing you might even tell your children about someday when they asked about you growing up. I never once had a friend run the gauntlet before. Wow, a friend. I guess that's what Rose Holland is. Rose Holland was about to risk everything for us, for me and Dee Dee. Suddenly overlapping the dread and the weightiness of it came stomach worm squirming guilt for not telling somebody, the principal, my mother, Dee Dee's parents, somebody. I had convinced myself that Rose was right. This is how you handle things. You don't go to the adults. You suck it up and make a bet about who can make it down a hill without dying. She said this was the only way to settle it. Maybe. Maybe if she won, it would mean more than just saving us from a dunking. Maybe Cameron and his friends would learn something. The embarrassment, just the thought of it, all the kids he'd picked on, that they'd picked on, laughing at whatever it was that Rose forced him to wear around school the next day. The trouble with that, though, I wasn't sure she was going to win. Nobody had ever died running the gauntlet, but the rest of the stories Dee Dee told were true. Some of the trees had carved initials of the riders they had taken out, chiseled reminders of how dangerous this entire thing was. I was on the verge of telling her not to go through with it, that we would find another way to deal with Cameron Crowe, but I didn't have to. Because standing there at the bottom of the hill between us and the summit, with hands stuffed in the pocket of his brother's hand-me-down jacket, was Wolf, and he squinted and frowned at us. He had been waiting. Somehow or another he had found out. He walked right up to me and grabbed the handlebars of the bike, my bike, and wheeled it around and started putting it in the other direction without saying a thing. "Wolf, wait," Dee Dee called. "What are you doing? We need that." "No, you don't," Wolf said. I thought about all the kids on the top of the hill, wondering if they were watching us, and if so, what they were thinking. That Rose Holland had taken one long look at the gauntlet and wussed out, that she was a chicken. "Hold up, Dee Dee, please. Don't you know what's happening?" Wolf spun around and looked at him. "Don't you know what's happening?" He looked at all of us. "What were you even thinking?" He was mad again, just like he had been in English the day before. It seemed by his stare that the last question was leveled at Rose. It took her a moment to say anything. She draped her arm around Dee Dee's shoulder. "I'm his champion, and I'm defending his honor," she said. She said it half jokingly, but Wolf didn't even crack a smile. "I heard about what happened in the bathroom," Wolf said, looking at Dee Dee and then Rose. "I know what this is about, but I'm telling you it's not worth it." "And I say it is worth it," Rose countered, grabbing a hold of the seat of the bike so Wolf couldn't drag it. "I'm sick of what those jerks did to Dee Dee and Frost and you and everyone else, and I want to see Cameron Cole eat dirt, okay?" Wolf let go of the handlebars, and Rose let the bike fall to the ground. We stood in the circle around it, all four of us, but it was obvious that this conversation was only between Wolf and Rose right now. "You can't stop me," Rose said. "I could call your dad," Wolf said. She shook her head. "Yep, by the time he gets free from work and gets out here, I will have already gone down that stupid hill." and it would take my mother half an hour to get dressed and find her car keys. Face it, Wolf, in 5 minutes I'm going to ride down that hill, and you can either stay and support me and be there with me when I screw up and crack my head open, or you can turn around and go home and pretend this has nothing to do with you. But decide now, because I'm taking that bike and I'm riding down that stupid freaking hill. Wolf stood over the bike trembling. He looked at all the people waiting at the top. You know this won't solve anything, he said. You know that, right? Maybe, Rose said. But it will mean something to me. And it'll mean something to Dee Dee. She looked over at Dee Dee, who nodded. And maybe if we're lucky, it'll send a message to them. If we're lucky, we won't have to call for an ambulance, Wolf said. Yeah, that too. Rose leaned close to Wolf, so close that their cheeks almost touched. I need to do this, and I know you understand. Wolf bent down and picked up my bike, and for a moment I was certain he was going to keep walking away. But then he aimed it back. I don't even believe you, he said. Just as long as you believe in me, Rose said. Had either of us said it, Dee Dee or me, it would have sounded gag-worthy. But coming from Rose, it was different. We didn't laugh or make fake vomit sounds. We just stood there for a moment, the four of us looking at each other. All right, Wolf said. Let's do this. And we're going to stop there. Sorry for the cliffhanger. Until next time.